And it is. And we are live. Good afternoon or evening to everyone. Welcome to today's CIT Tech Talk, an exclusive conversation with Bishop Charley Hames Jr. on his groundbreaking book, Leverage Leadership: Unlocking the Power of Influence, Impact, and AI. I am Teresa Duhart, General Secretary and Chief Information Officer for the General Department of Communication and Information Technology, better known as CIT, and your host. During this conversation, Bishop Hames will discuss how leaders can navigate today's digital landscape with boldness, purpose, and faith, and he will share powerful insights on what it really means to leverage leadership, how to grow your influence while staying rooted in your values and growing authentic influence, the benefits of technology as a tool, and why innovation is essential for the future of the church, understanding artificial intelligence or AI and using it responsibly in ministry and leadership, and what the future of the CME church looks like in the AI era. It is our hope that this episode will change your thinking, stretch your vision, and inspire your leadership journey. Before I begin this session, let me recognize Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick, the chair of the College of Bishops, Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas Sr., the College of Bishops of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church and their spouses, to my chair of the Department of Communication and Information Technology, Bishop James B. Walker, to the Vice Chair, Bishop Thomas L. Brown Sr., and to my bishop, our guest this evening, the presiding prelate of the Ninth Episcopal District, Bishop Charley Hames Jr., to my colleagues, the general officers, our Chief Administrative Officer, Judicial Council members, connectional officers, and members and friends. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm grateful to introduce my chair of the department, Bishop Walker. Unfortunately, he has some plane delays. Every flight in and out of DC is affected. Wonder why. And so I will go ahead and introduce Bishop Walker. Sorry, Bishop Hames. I am so sorry. Okay, a little bit about Bishop Hames. He is quite progressive. He is the 66th bishop of the CME Church and the line of succession on the first ballot. Remember that 3 years ago, 2022? Upon his election and consecration, the General Conference assigned him, of course, to the Ninth Episcopal District. We know his background, his many years, for almost 20 years, as the senior pastor of Beebe Memorial Cathedral, CME, in Oakland, California, one of the fastest growing congregations in the CME Church. We are honored to have such a progressive leader on our show today. He is the author of many books, but today's book, that the groundbreaking book that we'll be talking about today, is fire. It's on point, and we can't wait to start the conversation. Let me just say this, that Bishop Hames is the husband of our First Lady, Dr. Michelle Gaskill Hames. He's a proud father of 2 sons and 1 daughter, Charles, Jonathan, Elijah, JL. And then he's the grandfather of his grand guy, Maxton. And Bishop Hames is committed to fulfilling 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Welcome, Bishop Hames.
Again, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Dr. Duhart, and for your team making this day happen. We acknowledge Lady Sharon Dawson in the background, making sure that our facility is running perfectly and smoothly. Grateful and thankful for this opportunity, and I'm ready to dive into your questions. And we know Bishop Walker would be on if flight delays did not catch him. But we're grateful and thankful for the opportunity. So I'm ready when you are.
Absolutely. So before we begin, if you have questions for Bishop Hames about the book, Leverage Leadership, please post them in the Q&A section in Zoom or the chat. For our members who are viewing online at Facebook, please post your questions in the comment section. And thank you so much to Lady Doss, my business manager here for the CIT department, and I thank her for being here this evening. So I am extremely honored and privileged to discuss leverage leadership, unlocking the power of influence, impact, and AI. Bishop Hames, I see that your book is rising on the bestsellers list of Amazon in the
Yes.
categories of education leadership, religious leadership, and Christian church leadership.
Yes.
Seeing that this is an exclusive interview with you about this book, I do want you to help us become more acquainted with the book and address key takeaways from it. So I will
Mhm.
kick off the conversation. What inspired you to write Leverage Leadership? And what does the phrase mean to you personally?
Okay, I'll answer that in a couple of pieces. First of all, thank you for the great question. What inspired me to write this book? Literally, I was in a conference teaching leadership development. For some who may or may not know, I've been blessed and privileged to teach on leadership for the last 20 plus years in corporate sectors and faith-based sectors in what they call community benefit organizations and nonprofits. Along the way, I've taught more than 250 modalities around leadership, more than at least 500 theories around leadership. I was at a conference, and a gentleman walked up to me and asked me a simple question. He says, "This was amazing." I said, "Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments." He says, "I have one question." He says, "What is your leadership definition?" So I gave him a definition. He says, "No, what is your definition of leadership?" And it stunned me because what I came to the clarion call of introspection to find out is that I've been teaching everybody else's definition, but I never took the time to craft my own. And in this space, when you become an expert, if you will, on the subject, you ought to have your definition. And from that, it spawned the idea of me pulling back all of the experiences that I've had over the years in the church, outside of the church, um, marrying business and ministry. And it formed Leverage Leadership because literally that's who I am. That's what I personify. So the second piece of the question is leverage leadership. I'm going to give you the technical definition. It is the ability to strategically influence a situation to maximize outcomes. That's what the definition is. The ability to strategically influence a situation to maximize outcomes. What does that look like? That means your faith, that means your experience, that means your relationships, your technology to expand your impact without compromising your integrity. In today's world, it means leading with agility, clarity, and kingdom purpose in a culture of distraction.
Awesome, awesome. In the book, Leverage Leadership, is divided into three parts to help
Mhm.
reach this goal. The
Yes.
characteristics of leveraged leaders, becoming a leveraged leader, and advancing as a leveraged leader. So
Hmm.
let's look at part one, the characteristics of leveraged leadership. It
Hmm.
lays the foundation for what it truly means to lead with influence, integrity, and intentionality.
Hmm.
How do you define leveraged leaderships in today's context?
I'm glad you asked the question, but before I do this, if you don't mind, let me just give a quick shout out to our international missionary president, none other than Dr. Jacqueline I. Scott, who's online. I saw her in the comments, and to all of the pastors, presiding elders of the Ninth Episcopal District. Just had to give a shameless plug since I'm the patron bishop and bishop of the Ninth. Had to give a little shout outs, and I'll give shout outs as they go. But as we deal with these characteristics of a leveraged leader, in many respects, a leveraged leader characteristic is that the first thing that you do is that you steward trust, that you manage trust, right? And then you think in systems and not in silos. Oftentimes, when you see people bump up against challenges, is because they live inside of their heads and not inside of a system, right? This also means that leverage leaders' characteristics that they are willing to unlearn, relearn, and lean into purpose over popularity. So it's not how well someone likes me that matters. It matters how well I lean into my purpose that lead them to a greater purpose. All right. It means also a mind shift setting that you move from power over to power with. All right. That means from managing, if you will, to multiplying. That if you're the only person that can do your job, then you are already limited in your capacity to become a great leader. Another characteristic that is paramount for me in summation, I want to talk in totality because I do want those who haven't read the book to read the book, is that you are a progressive thinker, that you're a forward thinker, both with kingdom minded and future focus. And what I mean by that is that you might dream with data, but you seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and you still understand the value of strategic partnerships. That you play hard and you pray hard, but you plan smart.
All right.
Right. And those are some of the characteristics that I just want to lift up real quick.
Great. You've aligned your book with several scriptures, Proverbs 11:15, Psalm 78:72, and Luke 12:48. How do these three scriptures help leaders on their journey?
Um, I think both those particular scriptures that you mentioned, Proverbs 11:15 and Psalm 78:72, those are called my guiding scriptures. It's scriptures that deals or speaks with character and competency, right? And our pastors in the ninth know those two words real well, right? That character is not what you portray, but who you are when others are not looking at you, right? Competencies are surrounded by what skill set you have that you can execute on, right? Proverbs 11:15 warns us about unwise agreements. It teaches leaders to discern for alignment, not just opportunity. And oftentimes people use opportunity as their guiding force without understanding, if you will, is this assignment is in alignment with my purpose and what God has called me to do. So we see the great opportunity, but we don't have the competencies to execute it, then we're now misaligned and we miss the mark. Then Psalm 78 and 72, David led with integrity of heart and skillful hands. That's a blueprint, if you will. That leadership that is strategic and spiritual, that one without the other leads in imbalance. And how leaders can become balanced, right, is the ability to be first spiritual and then also strategic.
Awesome. What is the leverage leadership framework, and what are the characteristics of the leverage leaders? You've been indicating that. I want you to describe the mindset of that leverage leader.
Mhm.
What shifts are necessary for someone to move from traditional leadership to leveraged leadership? And then I'll ask a follow-up question. So what is the leverage leadership framework?
So I would like to do this by giving some kind of context, right?
Okay.
So 2004, graduated from Southern Methodist University, one of the first CMEs to graduate from Southern Methodist University with a doctorate in ministry, concentration in evangelism. I did that at the age of 29.
Wow.
Um, Somehow, I thought I was exhausted from school. My then leader, Bishop Henry Williamson, recommended me to be a part of a Summer Leadership Institute at Harvard University, which was partnered with Harvard Divinity School and Harvard Business School. One of my professors at that time was Ronald Heifetz, who is a guru, if you will, in leadership. And one of his philosophies is centered around adaptive leadership, right? He believes that we have to have flexibility over control. In that, that became one of the bases, if you will, for my 5 pillars for the framework for characteristics of leveraged leadership. It's vision, it's alignment, it's innovation, it's integrity, and then it's execution. And I'll try to say this real quick. Vision is the ability to take a virtual tour of your future and come back and make it your present day reality, right? So if you imagine yourself, whether it is a church, whether it's your home, just use home for example. If you see yourself in a 3-bedroom home, I'm just using it as an example,
Mm-hmm.
you can walk around in the rooms, you can see the sunken tub, you can see the walk-in closet, you can see the counter and the nook, but you might be living in an apartment, right? Your goal is what God has shown you in your future is to come back in your present day and start building the very thing that you saw in your future. That's what vision is. Alignment. You know, I believe that God aligns us in purpose and also for us to execute out who we ought to be. That many respects, none of us end up where we are by happenstance or by accident, but I do believe that we end up there by divine providence. When you're operating under the assumption of divine providence, then things in your life begin to align. In that same context, it moves to innovation. Innovation is really the key to unlocking the door when challenges show up in your life. And if you are in ministry, let's be honest and let's face it, there is no ministry that is challenge free, right? If you have a ministry that's challenge free, then there's no need for a calling. God only calls when there is a crisis, right? So if God is calling during a crisis, then he puts in the leader everything he or she needs to be innovative, right? Integrity. Um, Integrity is not being perfect, but whatever you say you're going to do that, right?
Amen.
Just simple.
Yes.
And then in that same context, execution. We have a lot, I heard a preacher say earlier today, we have a lot of people who start things but never finish them, right? So ultimately, as a characteristic of a leveraged leader, you have to have execution, the ability to follow through and make whatever you see come to pass.
That's great. So describe a leader with this mindset
Mhm,
that has progressive thinking lenses on and how
mhm.
he or she would think, seek the kingdom of God, and walk in purpose.
Yeah. This is going to be very simple, all right? But at the same time, I think it may be prophetic, right? You got to have faith. You have to have some pain. You got to have people. You have to have a platform and take those 4 things and turn it into your purpose.
Wow.
Faith, pain, people, platform, and turn it into purpose. Can you want me to make that plain? I'm glad you asked, right?
Thank you.
Right. You have to have
Powerful.
faith to believe God has called you to the purpose of which you've been called. That's number one. Nobody can give that to you. Nobody can create that for you. Nobody can really affirm that for you. right? Not your mom, not your father, not your colleagues, not your friends, not your children, right? Only God can do that. But God uses pain, hear me now, to permeate your ability to push past your comfort levels so that you can engage people in a way that you never have before. This is one of the fallacies of the church, or fallacies, I think, of people in leadership, is that we look to be light instead of looking to lead. When you lead, you're not going to always be light. And sometimes the very people that you help will turn around and hurt you. But you got to learn how to use that pain and the people to create your platform. Had you not gone through the pain, you wouldn't even understand your purpose, right? So leverage leaders don't just work harder, they work with God's wisdom and a strategic and alignment. That's why I hate to quote a scripture in this moment, but I just felt the unction came since it is Pentecost Sunday, right? Job says, though they slay me, yet will I trust him. Why would Job say that? Is he a masochist? Does he just like to go through hell? No. Job is saying this in the same context, that whatever they think they're doing to hurt me and kill me is really setting me up for my greater purpose. I ain't trying to get a shout in, but that was just a good point right there.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
Faith, pain,
Yeah.
people, platform. I love it. I love it. We're going to move to part two of leverage leadership, entitled
Mhm.
Becoming a Leveraged Leader. And it transitions from foundational principles to practical development,
Mhm.
guiding readers through the intentional steps that are required to grow into a leveraged leader, and efforts to make them part of the lifestyle. So you describe what it means to become a leverage leader. Um, you indicated that some of the tools for becoming a leverage leader require more practice. What are some
Mhm.
of those tools?
So if I could shift to some of it, in chapter 8, I talk about doing the internal work, right?
Okay.
What spiritual disciplines help you stay centered? I talk about the fact that you need silence, you need scriptural meditation, you need physical movement, and you need journaling, right? I call that soul maintenance, right? You can't pour if you're spiritually dehydrated. You can't lead from your overflow and not from your exhaustion, right? So it's it's critical for every leader to continue to do the very things that keep themselves maintained spiritually. I like this. One of my best buds, Pastor Matthew Watley, Kingdom AME Church. He says, because we used to always struggle. We used to look before the internet and YouTube. We would buy tapes so we can hear preachers, so we can nourish ourselves. And then when those tapes ran out or broke, if you will, for cassette tapes, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, please just Google it. Um, the tape would break. We wouldn't have anything. He says, "Hey man, we got to learn how to be like grandmama then." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Big mama cooked meals for 8 individuals, but when she got to the dinner table, they said, 'Big mama, you not eating.' She said, 'Baby, I ain't hungry.' He says, 'Why is that?' Because while I was fixing your food, I was tasting." In other words, we have to constantly feed ourselves while we're preparing to feed others, right? So the soul maintenance piece is critical, and it goes along with the internal work of discipline. I was teaching 2 nights ago. This is Sunday. I was teaching Thursday night um, to a group of executives around what do you do with leadership and apparel. I said people don't look for charisma; they look for consistency, right? Consistency only is developed when you are consistent, right? So I just make it plain. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I want to just give a little remedy. So people often it's like, well, look like you all over the place, and how can you do it? You look like that stuff will kill you. And I don't look like I'm tired because I'm not tired, because I have a disciplined system by which I operate with. You know, Every morning, 6 a.m., I'm up. That first 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I'm meditating, I'm reading the word, I'm being in silence. I ain't talking to nobody. I'm not on social media. I'm not on the gram or TikTok or the book. I'm just me and God, right?
Mhm.
And then after I go through that moment, then from 7 to 8 o'clock, I'm returning calls or talking to my executive team on how to plan out our work for the rest of the week, right? For some of you all who call me, understand between that point, 7:30, 8:30, I'm either on a 5 mile walk or run, I'm going to a gym, I'm going to hit some balls. Why? Because I want to get that out of the way. So by the time 9:30, 10, and I'm in the office and doing office work, I can run the gamut of the day. Now, in the midst of that, I'm making sure I feed myself physically, right? Because that's the only way I can give my best self to those who I attempt to serve and manage the level of stress that I'm under without cracking or using other methods to try to inundate myself or to cope with the hell that I have to manage. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that's why I can do it with a
Absolutely.
smile,
Yes, you can. You are
right?
definitely disciplined. Yes, sir.
Right. So that's you got to do the internal work. And oftentimes, if I could say this part, I want to, because I know there's much more you want to talk about, but this is critical. I want leaders to hear this. Do not feel guilty about taking time for self-care. If you can't take care of yourself, how can you care for somebody else? So those things that I mentioned, it's important that you put you at the top of the priority so that you can give back your best self to others. I'll stop right there.
Oh, that's great. That is great, great, great advice, wisdom. In chapter 9 of having honest conversations, why are honest conversations so difficult for leaders? And what are the key steps to having courageous yet compassionate dialogue that builds trust and transformation?
I think the reality is that honest conversations scare people for two reasons. They risk losing control and comfort. Most people don't like the idea or the feeling of being vulnerable and naked. But one of the things that we must realize is that nothing changes without truth. That's why we hear in the Gospel of John that he comes with truth and grace. They're kind of paradoxical in their whole nature. But the point of it is that you have to approach honest conversations with courage and compassion, right? Courage to confront the issue and not the person. But oftentimes people interpret you confronting the issue as confronting them.
Mm.
But you cannot get caught up in another person's insecurity because they don't have the ability to discern to know the difference.
Yes.
So for example, I might love you, but I abhor your tardiness. So when I address your tardiness, I'm not addressing you or attacking you. I'm trying to correct the ability for you to get in alignment or on time, right? So one of the keys to have an honest conversation is start with curiosity. Do you really want to get on the other side of this challenge that you're experiencing with this person, right? I know some people are naturally psychologically conflict averse. They don't like conflict. But if you start with curiosity, it takes away the myth or the mythology around conflict. The other thing is that you can be clear and not cruel. Because oftentimes people feel like they got to be cruel to communicate something that need to be clear. I often get on pastors, or I cringe when I hear pastors talk about resources in the church, of tithing in the church. Pastors get super tense and angry. What am I? Wait. What was all of that about? Right? You know, why don't you be clear in the truth? This is how we fund the kingdom. This is why this is needed. Thank you for your contributions. You could be clear with not being cruel, right? Set the table and then serve the truth.
That's good. That's good.
Are you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Set the table and then serve the truth, right? Like anybody remember growing up, some people didn't like their vegetables. Like I got a bad story. One of my cousins, my grandmother, God bless her soul, and my aunt, bless their soul. But one time I got in trouble. I got disciplined. No, I didn't get disciplined. I got whooped. Uh, I got whooped because my cousin couldn't have an honest conversation about her vegetables. So what she did was she would take her vegetables and she would ball them up in some paper towel or a napkin. And back when those big tables where you can slide them from 4 people to 6 people, they had the levers in it. She would take her food and hide it in the lever, right? So over time, my grandmother said, "What is that smell?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm sitting at the table, right? I'm sitting there," and she began to pull out the food. I got whooped for what my cousin was doing. Are you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I can only get there because the table was set.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there ready for the meal. Am I making plain sense?
Yes, you are.
You got to
Yes,
set the table, then serve the truth.
Amen.
All right, I'll stop
Wonderful.
right there.
Okay, and so in chapter 10,
Uh-huh.
you talk about assembling a success team.
Yes.
You're on point. What qualities should leaders look for when they're building a success team? And how can they ensure the team is aligned with both the mission and the moment?
Oh my God. I'm trying to think of something that's okay. I'll use this example. I remember pastoring, and I was in a difficult situation, and so I would be very vivid or very vocal with my prayers to God. And I said, "God, I need you to send me some people. I need some people. I can't do this by myself. I need some people, God." And God sent me people, and none of them had what I needed. So I said, "Okay, God, I understand you answer prayers, but now let me be more specific. I need this person. I need this kind of person. I need this person to have this kind of level of education. I need this person to have this kind of resources. I need this person to have this kind of influence." What are you saying? I'm glad you asked. Look for people who are skilled, surrendered, and synchronized with your mission. That's good. Can I say that again?
Yes, indeed.
Look for people who are skilled. I don't know what it is that when we come to the church, we park our brain at the door, right? It's like it
Yes.
turns it off, right? People are running billion-dollar situations in their secular world or in their work life, and they come to church and they don't know how to do anything, right? So look for people who got skill, but also look for people who are surrendered. For me to live as Christ and to die as gain. That people who have a consciousness about Christ, that they have the capacity to serve, surrendered. And then look for people who are synchronized, already lined up with the mission. You ain't got to fight them about mission and ministry because they're already in alignment with it. You'll see who those individuals are because they'll be the first people at church. They'll be the nicest people in church. They'll be the people who you ask them to do something on your behalf, on behalf of the church, and they don't fight you or have a church conference about you just serving, but they'll come up and serve anyway. What does that mean? Chemistry matters, right? You can't have personality conflicts and expect to get along in ministry. You got to have some level of chemistry. I ain't saying you got to be alike, but you got to have some chemistry, right? Character is non-negotiable. I'm going to keep saying that, right? And alignment beats agreement every time. See, if I agree with you, but it doesn't produce any results, then I'm just as well as an unsurrendered, unskilled, unsynchronized Philistine. Oh, I did say that. Okay. You have to be in alignment because alignment beats agreement every time. I'll stop right there.
Oh, that's great. I got picked up on some gems. Alignment beats agreement every time. Chemistry matters. Look for skilled people, surrendered, synchronized.
Yes.
You're on point, Bishop Hames. You're definitely on point. You're speaking to me now because
All
you're
right.
in that
Thank you.
leadership mode. Yes, sir. Setting goals. How do you help leaders move from vague aspirations to setting bold, clear, and achievable goals? And I know faith has a role in that and
Mhm.
in goal setting.
And let
How do
me
we help move our members, our leaders from vague aspirations to setting bold, clear, and achievable goals?
faith adds boldness, but strategy adds focus. So faith add boldness, right? Get you out here to do it where nobody you can depend on but God, right? But strategy adds focus. We go from I want to grow to I want to increase in community engagement by 30% in 6 months. That's a strategy, right? The Bible tells us write the vision and make it plain,
Mhm.
right? That's a strategy, right? So we cannot have wishful thinking without measurable outcomes, right? So going into any situation, you have to have an end in mind of what you want it to look like. So it's a pie in the sky to say, I want every church to grow by 30%. And I have not given the church or its leaders strategy on how to do that, right? I can cast a wide net all I want to, but it will never catch any fish because the net itself is too wide,
Hmm.
right? You have to have a strategic partnership with your faith. That's good. I need to coin that. If
That
somebody put
is,
that
that
in the
is. Chat.
chat, yeah, send that back to me, please, and I'll post it and I'll put facts on the internet, right? No.
Well, you were right there. And the last portion of that part two is nurturing relationships. You
Hmm.
talk about the power of nurturing relationships. So what are some practical ways that
Hmm.
busy leaders can build and sustain meaningful connections that drive long-term impact?
So I will say the first thing, I'm just giving y'all some gems today, make time, not excuses, right? And how you make time is you plan time. So for example, I needed to be in two places this weekend. I needed to be at the opening of Hollywood Bowl to support Dr. Michelle in her work. This Saturday, I needed to be at Hayes Tabernacle Sunday for a meeting with our legal team. But I also had a request to be in Oklahoma for Pastor Sterling Mitchell's 20th pastoral anniversary. I could not be at both places. They did not have capacity for a video. So I sent a poetic treatise honoring his 20th anniversary and asked one of the officers to read it, right? That's making time and not excuses. You can use voice memos for those who have smartphones, right? iPhone is easier to do. I'm not hating on those who have Androids, or as my former pastor used to say, an Android. Um, you can write handwritten notes. You can use digital tools. Chat GPT should be your best friend. Whatever helps you stay present. Remember, relationships are the runway for legacy. I remember Dr. Jerome McNeil. I was a good friend of his. I was his little brother. But I later discovered that he had a lot of friendships, but he had the uncanny ability to make everybody feel like they were the only person that mattered in his life, right? Because he was intentional about making time for people, right? And you can make time without killing yourself.
That is great. Relationships are the runway to
For legacy.
legacy.
For
Wow.
legacy, yeah.
For legacy. Nice. All right. I'm moving to the last part of the book, which
Mm-hmm.
is my favorite chapter of the book because it's focused on equipping leaders with advanced strategies to sustain growth, drive innovation, and expand their influence.
Mm-hmm.
It builds upon the foundational principles introduced earlier in the book, guiding
Mm-hmm.
leaders to elevate their impact and legacy. But technology is that common thing, and we
Mm-hmm.
must embrace it, understand AI, leverage
Mm-hmm.
AI for leadership to help us thrive in the future of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So, in chapter 13, embracing technology as a leverage leadership tool. In
Mm-hmm.
what ways can leaders effectively integrate emerging technologies into their leadership practices without losing the human touch that is essential to authentic leadership?
First of all, we got to remember that tech is a tool, not a temple. Tech is a tool, not a temple. That AI is a language, not a person, right? So you use it to listen better, to reach farther, to serve deeper. You automate the process and not the pastoral, right? So it should free you up to spend more time praying. It should free you up to spend more time learning about the needs of your membership. It should free you up to be more efficient in your department. It's simply a tool, not the temple itself, right? So embracing it, that's how you embrace it without losing humanity. You got to also realize, and you'll see it in the book, is that I talk about how it is a language. It's a language that only works when you know how to talk to it, right? And I hate to use this, but this is a great example. So y'all do not hate on me. I'm just going to use this example, right? If you are in a relationship of whatever kind, I'm not defining it, right? It's easier to get better results when you know how to talk to the person that you're in relationship with. Am I right? If you
Yes,
misuse your language, you won't get the best results. That makes sense?
makes sense.
So automate the process and not the pastoral.
Great. Now, here is the $6 million question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do leaders not embrace technology or are afraid to use it?
Um, Fear, overwhelm, a lot of misinformation. Many people have been led to believe that tech will replace them,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't have the capacity to replace you. It can only enhance what is essential. Well, no, 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 Bishop, that's not right. They're going to be replacing jobs by 2030. That's not true. I've seen the other side. I've seen the humanoids. They can only do what the language bearer gives them, right? Even with generative AI that has the capacity to generate stuff and make stuff, is only generating from a language pool, right? So the best thing that I would tell people to do, get informed with factual information. I know we live in a post-factual world where people will like to tell you what the truth is and expect you to believe it, right? Just because people do that don't mean that facts are not still real,
Mhm.
right? So it's important that you understand that this thing only enhances life of what's essential and not destroy it. And I'm gonna give some examples later on once we get into some other questions. But the latter part of the book, I'm encouraging everybody to read and read it twice.
Chapter 14,
Mhm.
understanding AI. Let's talk about AI.
Mhm.
Why do you feel it was important to include artificial intelligence in a conversation about leadership and impact?
Because simply this, the church has the ability to be on the precipice of a new innovation. We missed the industrial age completely. We missed the informational age completely, right? We missed the technology age completely. This is an opportunity for us to be awake and pay attention to how this will transform your ministry. I'm planning to do a podcast in a couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll be out and produced. But one of the young men that I'm gonna have, he's a good friend of mine. His name is Justin Lester. You can look him up on Instagram. He's that tech pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin is a programmer by trade, but he's a pastor. And he has his church operating as if he has a staff of 200, and it's all AI. He has maybe 3 people working for him, but he has all of these things working because he understands that AI can shape how we lead, how we love, and how we live. Ignoring it is not wisdom, it's simply avoidance, and we're going to be passed by. Misconception that AI is evil or anti-faith. In reality, it's actually neutral. Its power lies in how it is used. Who is the hacker on the other side? Who is the data person? Who's the coder on the other side? That really determines how it's worked. And my message to skeptics, God can use any tool. Don't reject what you haven't researched.
That is great. That is great. I mean, I
Yeah.
have future questions on that chapter, but you answered it all.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some in chapter 15, leveraging AI for leadership?
Mhm.
Um, what are some practical examples of how AI can be leveraged to enhance leadership effectiveness, and what ethical considerations should leaders keep in mind when they are implementing AI solutions?
I will say, first of all, that you need to remain transparent. If you're using AI, say you use it. Don't try to, especially pastors, don't try to use AI for your sermons. People can figure it out. If you can't pronounce the word, they know it's not yours. All right. So, you ain't got to struggle with Greek no more. You might struggle with another word that you didn't write. Right. Be transparent. Say, hey, I use AI to do this. Or ask people for consent. Give people constant reminders. Don't digitize what needs to be discipled, right? To disciple people, you don't need to digitize everything, right? A couple of things that you can use. You can generate prayer devotionals through AI, but make sure you go back and make sure that the theology represent you. Because again, I told you there's a coder on the other side. So in Chat GPT, I made sure there's a personalized section. I made sure I put in it what I want it to do for me, so that I won't get a white nationalist theology in my prompts, right? Or white evangelical in my prompts. I need solid theology that can meet the needs of the people that I serve, right?
Right.
So I say that I'm not afraid to use it, but I also have ownership and authorship of the words that I use. So, doing a prayer devotional is just one thing. A guy asked me the other night, like I told you, I was teaching leadership around perilous times. And he says, hey, can you send me an article on what you did tonight? I say, yeah, I'll give it to you in 30 seconds. He's like, huh? I said, yeah. So I said, hey, this lecture I did, and I put the lecture in there. I said, this is a lecture I did. Can you rewrite this as an article to give to such and such for this evening? Make it 250 words. Boom, it's done. Sent it to his text message. He said, hey, thanks. Hey, man, this is good. Right. Let me just talk about a couple of other quick things. I talked about Chat GPT, Otter AI for meetings, Canva for design, Gamma, GAMMA.app. That's for PowerPoints. If you just copy and paste your text in there, It'll create amazing PowerPoint. I just used it again the other night. Normally it would take me 6, 7 hours to do a good PowerPoint, and I have all of these subscription to stock art. I don't need that anymore. I just got Gamma. Boom, it's done. And a lot of the stuff that I'm mentioning is free. For example, if you go to my website, drcharleyhames.com, and I use that interplay for those who might not be in the faith world, they can still be approachable. The music that's on there, Standing in Grace, that's my tagline, right? That was created by AI. Suno is the app, and I did that free. I just had to make sure I had to put the right prompts in. I said, hey, I want a middle-aged African-American sister who sings R&B with a tinge of gospel. I don't want it country, but I want it urban, and make sure that it flows and it have a poetic tone in its sound. Boom, it's up on the website, right? I would have had to pay somebody years ago, several $100s to produce that. It did it for me in a few seconds, about 2 minutes, right? So there's a ton of tools out there that you can explore, and I encourage you to do so.
How do you see church leadership evolving in the next 5 to 10 years as technology advances in the
I see,
CME church?
yeah, I see the church, CME Church or the church universal. I see it being more agile if it's going to survive. It's going to be definitely become more digital, and it's going to become more decentralized, right? The essence that will remain is shepherding souls. Leaders will still be needed, both digitally, but with spiritual authority, right? That those keys are going to be not only essential, but it's going to demand us to live in both worlds. If the pandemic hasn't taught us anything like we are tonight, normally I would have had to fly to you to have this interview, and we had to have 6 cameras set up, makeup, and the whole nine. Now we can do this right over Zoom, and we have access to anybody literally around the world who had the opportunity to see this on Facebook or through Zoom.
Wonderful. And um, you've answered pretty much all of my questions in this
Yay.
great interview. I have one final wrap-up question.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you could summarize the heart of leverage leadership, unlocking the power of influence, impact, and AI, in one sentence for the next generation of leaders, what would it be?
I will say leverage what God has given you: faith, influence, technology to multiply your impact without losing your soul. That's
Amen.
it.
This has been an awesome almost hour with you. You've dropped some wonderful gems.
Thank you.
You took time out of your busy schedule to be with us to have this important conversation. Um, Artificial intelligence or AI is scary to a lot of people,
Mhm.
particularly church members. But you, as a bishop, as a longtime pastor in our great CME church, you have written a groundbreaking book that anyone, not just in the CME church, anyone who is serving in kingdom ministry or God's business can really reflect and learn a lot. Leaders can be shaped by your book. I I, I know that you are in ministry. I'm in ministry, serving in it. But a lot of the takeaways I can see it, and from the business world and the world of higher education, it could be applied in many areas. And so we thank you. I thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking, the time out of your schedule to bring this dynamic book. I would say living it so our members can hear it and see it and want to read it if they haven't gotten the book or not. Is there any other um, messages, anything else that you want to say about your book?
Yeah, I would say people are asking how can they get the book if they're not on Amazon. It is everywhere, but I would encourage you to go to my website. That's Dr. Charley Hames,
I
HAMES.com.
got it.
And you can put that out there. Uh, and the books are available. You order it within a few days. It should be to you in the mail. Um, and we look forward to sharing it with you, sharing it with the world. So thank you all for this amazing. Thank you all for all the comments. I'll have to go back and read them. I can't see them when we're actually live because my mind is focused on the questions and the concerns. But thank you all on Facebook and everywhere else that you may be this evening. And Dr. Duhar, thank you for pushing me to have this opportunity to be with you today. Hopefully, it was a blessing to all who experienced it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will capture these the questions, the chat, and send them to you. A lot of these are just actually wonderful comments thanking you
God
for
bless you.
today's powerful conversation. Let me take this opportunity to thank our members as well around the CME Church for
Mhm.
taking time out of their busy schedule to participate in today's webinar. I saw Madam President Dr. Scott earlier. I see we have the General Secretary of Lay Ministries, Dr. Shannon Falk on,
Mhm.
and many pastors, ministry leaders here as well. We thank them for that. I
Mhm.
truly hope that this conversation has inspired everyone and will help elevate leadership skill sets and expand our leaders' influence and harness the power of technology and AI to use in the local church and ministries as we strive to serve God's people with excellence and innovation. So I do have on the screen how you can um, go and out to the website and um, purchase the book as well. I do have a few announcements, upcoming events this week and the next week or so. And just to make sure we're lifting up other events, they have the Joy in Jesus Faith Sharing and Testimony Service this Thursday. That's going to be led by our own General Secretary, Reverend Dr. Leon Moore. And then Bishop Ricky D. Helton is his chair. Next Tuesday, the CIT department will be hosting its monthly training session on Glue. Remember, Glue offers free and discounted text messaging services to CME churches and entities in the U.S. Currently, there are over 225 churches signed up. And I know that we have many more CME churches that could benefit from using this platform to reach members as well as the community. We also have perfect timing. I'm giving a AI training on Chat GPT and how to write prompts on Thursday, June 26th, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Be there so you can learn more about Chat GPT and how to put in the appropriate prompts to get what you need. Finally, from CIT, we'll have our monthly cybersecurity training, AI voice cloning, how to detect fake calls. And Reverend Tanisha Hollingshed out of the 8th Episcopal District will be leading that session rather. And then finally, for our connectional event, the 13th Annual Unity Summit and the Connectional Lay Institute is scheduled October 6th through 11th at the Hilton, Memphis. Look for registration to open later this week. And those are our important announcements. Well, that is it for today. Let me again thank Bishop Hames for an awesome conversation. And I'm hoping that you, Bishop Hames, and all of our members across the Connectional Church have a great rest of Sunday, great evening, and week ahead. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and may God bless each of you.
God bless you. And thank you again for the